Let me go to the whistleblowers in the military. What's happening in our military is very disturbing. We are labeling people that voted for Donald Trump, let's say, as extremists, and we're shoving CRT down their throat. Tell me about the whistleblowers that you have heard from, and how prevalent is this in our military?
So Congressman Crenshaw and I had created a website to encourage people to contact us in the military or veterans or families of service members if they were being exposed to critical race theory training sessions, this kind of deeply anti-American notion that there are certain races who are inherently oppressive or privileged and certain races that are inherently victimized or oppressed, that we should judge people by the color of their skin as opposed to their character and their performance in the line of duty. It's one thing, Glenn, for woke corporations or left-wing college campuses to truck in this kind of nonsense. It's another thing for our military, the most important institution in our society, because they are literally what keeps us free and what keeps us independent and preserves our Constitution. We have received hundreds and hundreds of complaints from service members, whether it's frontline training in their duty units or the service academies or professional military schools like the War College. I've raised it now twice in committee hearings with Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, yesterday with the Chief of Naval Operations, Mike Gilday, that this needs to stop. We should not be trying to indoctrinate our young troopers and young officers in this kind of nonsense. And I got to say, Glenn, it's not just critical race theory either. You know, we've had reports of mid-career officers at those professional military schools having to take extended classes on climate change. I mean, what does climate change have to do with being a major in the Marine Corps or being a battalion commander in the Army? They need to be studying tactics and operational excellence and military history and biography to learn their craft and their trade. You know what I bet? I bet China is not teaching its mid-career officers about climate change as opposed to how to defeat the United States.
Okay, so let me ask you, because we have all of this stuff happening at an administrative level. This is Woodrow Wilson's dream. Biden is putting in a lot of these policies without going through Congress because, quite honestly, Congress gave the power years ago to the administrative branch. So how do we stop this? Because it's everywhere.
So, Glenn, there's a few things that I'm doing. So there's first the simple fact of shining a bright light on it, like we're doing here, like I've done in these hearings, I think will create some tension inside the Department of Defense of people who don't want this and say that, you know, look, Senator Cotton just questioned Secretary Austin, and Secretary Austin said we shouldn't be doing this, and you should report it to your chain of command. So I think it's very helpful that this get exposed. Second, this summer when we write the annual defense bill, I will be proposing amendments that prohibit exactly this kind of training session. And third, you know, we confirm thousands, probably actually tens of thousands of officer promotions every year on the Senate. Those are largely done just by a voice vote. Obviously, you know, we're not going to get into who's being promoted from second lieutenant to first lieutenant. However, there are only a few dozen, a few hundred general officer promotions every year. And if the military doesn't knock this off, maybe it's time that we start digging a little more deeply into what those generals have been doing or tolerating or even promoting in their commands. So, I mean, I don't want to agree 100%, but I will if I have to.
Yeah. Okay. One last topic here as we're looking at the state of our union right now. How are we ever going to get the truth on COVID and China with their lab leak theory? They control almost everything. The United States, clearly, the administration is beholden to China. Are we ever going to find out? Because I think Fauci said yesterday we may never know.
So, Glenn, I think there's a good chance we may never have hard, conclusive proof, you know, the kind of direct evidence or smoking gun, in part because China has probably destroyed most of those evidence and disappeared or even killed persons who had firsthand knowledge. Now, it's possible that we might have a defector or whistleblower that brings evidence out of China and shares it with us. It's always possible. But I think most Americans can use their common sense, Glenn. They can just look at all of the other evidence, the circumstantial evidence, which all points to those labs. Literally not a single piece of evidence points to that stupid food market. I mean, give me a break. This virus didn't originate up in some remote mountain village next to a cave full of bats. It came out of a city larger than New York. Coincidentally, just a few blocks away from those labs that research exactly these kind of viruses, a lab that is run by a woman whose nickname is literally the Bat Lady. I mean, I think most Americans can look at those facts and say, China is responsible for this virus. It most likely originated in those labs.
But if we're not going to punish China because we may not have the evidence, shouldn't people here be punished for the whitewashing and the out-and-out lies? I mean, we know now about hydroxychloroquine and what the media and what scientists, even scientists now know were part of a cover-up and threatening violence on people that were speaking up for things like hydroxychloroquine. Is anyone going to pay a price?
So, well, first off, Glenn, to get back to China, I think they should pay a price, and we should make that price very steep. We don't need a Perry Mason moment to hold China accountable for what happened in Wuhan and what they unleashed on the world. And then second, there's a lot of people that have a lot of answering to do. I mean, look, Tony Fauci has basically become a Democratic activist in a white lab coat. He, for many months, prevaricated, dissembled, misdirected, evaded on what his agency had done. It had funded indirectly through an American nonprofit gain-of-function research in those Wuhan labs, which was prohibited by the Obama administration at the time. Yet Tony Fauci, like so many of these bureaucrats, think they know better, think that they don't have to respond to elected officials, and it's time for him to go. And if he won't resign, then Joe Biden should fire him.
Which won't happen.
Well, I seem to notice that he's not out there nearly as much. I think even the Biden administration is beginning to recognize that he's become a liability and that the American people have lost faith in him.
Are you sensing at all in the Senate that there is a healthy respect at all that is starting to be gained because of the American people as they are starting to stand up and speak out about things like critical race and some of these extremists? Is there any awakening that you're seeing on the other side that makes you believe that, geez, we might have been reaching too far here?
Well, not so much from the Democrats, Glenn. I mean, I think Republicans have long held the American people and their good common sense opinions in respect. I think some Democrats may be waking up and growing fearful of that opinion and what it means for the Democrats in the midterm elections next year. But I also think a lot of them are still trying to pull the wool over the eyes of the American people for a little bit longer.
The last question I have is on this new task force that the White House is announcing and getting into bed with high tech to try to weed out these domestic terrorists, things that every Democrat pushed against when you were even talking about the extremists overseas. They're now spying on us, the American people. They've got a new whistleblower line where you can turn in your neighbors or your own family if you think that they are extremists. You concerned about this, and is anybody on the Hill talking about it?
Well, yeah, I mean, we shouldn't have big tech engaged in this kind of censorship or surveillance, especially surveillance for the Biden administration. I mean, their opinion of a domestic extremist is probably any of the 74 million people that voted for Donald Trump or another Republican candidate for office last year. But I think we've seen the consequences over the last year of these big tech companies thinking they know better, just like Tony Fauci, and they're going to suppress information. And it turns out the information they suppress is often correct. What's best, and this is something that good old-fashioned liberals once believed, back in the 1950s and 1960s, is to have a robust and vigorous debate. And if you think someone is spreading lies or has weak arguments, the way you prevail is not to try to silence them using the power of the state or these giant monopoly companies, but present better evidence and make more compelling arguments.
Senator Tom Cotton, thank you so much. Thanks for your service, sir, and it's always great to have you on. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Glenn. Good to be back on with you.